had a good holiday, starting the new year. We've had several committee meetings we're going to be talking about a little bit. Before we get started, though, let's go ahead and begin with our call to order, which basically is that each of the members of this board, like any other government board, have an obligation to avoid both potential and possible conflicts of interest or any appearance of conflict. Does anyone today know of any appearance of conflict or any problem or issue that might be perceived with some of the matters we have coming before us today? If not, I'll take that as no. Before we do public comment, I want to recognize a new member of our board. We have Attorney Jack Westall, who's going to serve as our legal counsel. Jack, it's good to have you here. Thank you. Good to be here. You're doing a good job. You know it will. Jack, you want to say anything, or do you have any comments?
No, I always have very little to say. A lot of times nothing is a good thing to say.
May I say one thing?
Yes, ma'am.
I have seen Mr. Westall navigate through some very bumpy waters through animal issues, and Juan is going to agree, and he's just very calm.
Thank you.
Very calm.
Calm is good.
Yeah.
Calm is good.
You get your animals, you get your men.
That's right. All right, thank you. Let's go ahead and take public comment. We have 3 minutes for any public comment. If any member of the public wants to address us or bring up any issues or have any questions for us, we're glad to take the questions. Does anybody need public comment today? Nancy Nelson, good to have you here.
Hey, David. I'm Nancy Niels Nelson. I'm a member of the County Land Conservation Advisory Board, and I'm also the treasurer for the Weaverville Art Safari, a nonprofit co-op of artists up in Weaverville. I'd just like to state on the record that the Art Safari Co-op would like to make sure that the authority knows that we feel that we would be just as eligible for grants that are given by this board as other art organizations here in the city, and we wish at some time that the county would be included in the auspices of this committee. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for all your public service. You're on many groups, many organizations. Thank you. Jerry Rice, did you have
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. The lawyer had a few words to say. That's good. That saves money. I have a lot of words and it don't save money, but maybe it does. One of the concerns that I have is, as a nice board and all of you configured around here, I know you now and know what you think and are about what you want to do, I believe, but my concern is for the taxpayers. How can we save money? And this thing, when it started, they called the independent authority. Now it's become the extension of the government, and government has never saved money. They always spend money. And the concern that I have is 3.5 cents is not going to do what this committee wants to do. There's no way. And I think you're waiting for one to present her budget. And let me tell you, it's all about money. I think we ought to rename this committee. You don't have to change your letters. Mr. Gant will write this down for history. I want you to name it CRA. That stands for Cash Real Assets. Because if you ain't got cash, you ain't going to do nothing. Now, to get to the more serious end of it, other than money is serious, is the contamination of these sites of property on the budget today, or on the commissioner's thing today, is the bridge to nowhere. It's crossing from 1923 over into the Inca BASF property, which is a contaminated landfill and contaminated site. More than just one, it's almost a whole piece of property. And when you look at greenways, pathways, and all this stuff, you are looking at something here at the aquatic center that's beyond belief when you look at the contamination on that site. And not just, I'm not saying aquatic center, I'm talking about the whole property. So I hope you keep that in mind when you're moving through and thinking about the things you want to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ross. Any other public comment today? If not, then I'll entertain a motion to follow the agenda as we have presented it today. Motion by Mr. Frost, second by Mr. Briggs. Is there any discussion? All those in favor of following the agenda as we have published it, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Motion carries 7-0. Approval of minutes. Any changes? Can't with two T's. But I've been called a lot worse.
Move to approve the minutes with that.
Two T's, good. All right, thank you, Deputy A. Is there a second? Second, is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye. All opposed, no. The agenda, the minutes are adopted by several votes. We're very fortunate today to have our county manager here. Wanda Green is a world-class county manager. I guess the more, I've been burned from one of the conventions in a place I will not name. As you probably might remember, not too long ago, it was warm and it was cold here. But I will tell you, as I go to conventions and I meet county managers and I learn Wanda Green's performance level, we are blessed. We have someone that understands numbers, someone that understands how to get things done, and knows how to make things work. So it is a great privilege to introduce Dr. Wanda Green. Many doctors, many degrees, and she will tell us a little bit about the budget. I'd also like to recognize Commissioner David King is here today. Thank you for being here, Commissioner. He is good to go. We've got a meeting after this, so you're doing double duty today.
Well, thank you for letting me be here. I have to say, I love what I do every day, so it makes it a lot easier to do that. And it's always something happening that makes no two days to be able to fly. And I have to say that's the case this week. I wanted to just kind of give you an overview of how this budget is put together and then how our process works, so that you have some confidence that as you go forward, how you'll be involved and what we'll be able to deliver to you for your decision making. If you look at the very top sheet here, this is probably the document that you saw up front. This is how it says we do these things and we're going to spend this much money and get this much revenue, and therefore we can do a $3.10 tax rate down here at the right. But if you look, if you start with culture, recreation, and admin, and come down through CR facility maintenance, those are day-to-day operations inside the county, whether you're running, Pack Library, Lake Julian, whatever operation or program we're running, those costs are included in those first items. And we do have a real methodical way that we go about putting the budget together. We will talk about from Pack Place down as we move through this, but how do you get that money, include that money is a little bit different. If you look, we try to make it as easy on departments as we can make it, but at the same time also make sure that we're very consistent about catching places where mistakes we have. The second thing that you see in your packet is what we call the salary and wage report. This is a public information document. It's basically every position we have in culture and recreation, and it's the current salary, this is the longevity of their employment with us. But this is a public record document. You want to know about our employees, we're going to do that. So we start our planning for salary and expenses with the document that supports this. But as you know, salary is just not the only thing that you pay. And we want to put that information together so that we hand that out to the departments. And we know that we've used the right percentages. The percentages we include are, we pay longevity, depends on how long you've been here. 401k is a fixed percentage for everybody. FICA is not a fixed percentage. It's a fixed percentage when you start. There's a point where it becomes less, and then there's a point where it picks back up and becomes a higher amount again. So we want to make sure that we're not asking somebody in a department to put the budget together to know all those percentages and risk making a mistake and come up short in their budget. Retirement percentage is around 6% for the county. It's also a deduction of Macon County employees. Health insurance is a flat fee that we use. We are a self-funded organization. I have been for 20-something years, and we reevaluate the county's portion of that premium every year as we come to closing these things to see. We've been very fortunate. Our increases have been tiny compared to the nation, and Rob Thornberry does a really good job of managing those costs. And I always say he can get a discount out of any doctor's group in town. He's really good at that. And our discounts are really close to 50% on doctor's office are. So it's really good. But that number is something that can change every year. We put that number in. Life insurance is something we carry. It's a flat fee for every employee. Workers' comp is based on a percentage of salary, and unemployment is a flat fee. Let me tell you why we have those in here, and they're a little different than how other organizations do it. One of the things that used to drive directors crazy that they come to me about me and say, I've got a workers' comp case. I didn't expect it. It's turning out to be a very large expense, and I don't have the ability to meet even my current operational budget. So what we did was we started just evenly laying out those costs based on either the flat fee for unemployment or the percentage for workers' comp, so that we've got a reserve pool that we pull those from, and the department's not burdened. When in May, they've got $100,000 on workers' comp. When you're in May, you can't save $100,000 when you cover those costs. So we tried to lay it out in a way that works really well for departments. It's probably different than other organizations do that, but we have a pretty level playing field across the county, and we provide that information to the departments. In fact, it just has gone out this week, so departments can start to put their 15 budget together. So there's a lot of rationale for how it came to be. If you look, there's this many employees, none of those came to be without a lot of thought in terms of how many branches do we have, how many hours do we operate, how do we operate the temporaries, do we have unemployed. So all of those things are calculated and built based on the operations that we have. Culture and recreation is one of these departments that it just doesn't behave in an even way. I mean, swimming pools aren't open in January. They're open in May and September, so you're going to see spikes of expense. And you just see some, I call it cyclical behavior in the programs that culture and recreation has. Library is much more, straight line in their expenses than we find in recreation. So this is the first piece of information that departments send, and they get it in a much different format. But it's the piece of information that departments get to start putting their budget together. And we check them all. I mean, we go back and say, now we're not sure this decision's going to make for a year. Can we, and I can look at Ed or Brandon and they can say, they've been through these conversations. Do we really need this position in the Is there a way to cut some expenses here? Once we lock down salary and benefit expenses, departments cannot touch it. You can't move money from there to spend it somewhere else. It's absolutely locked down, and we do that for two reasons. One is we appropriate a pretty significant amount of fund balance to try to hold our tax rate down. And one way we're able to not have to use that fund balance is to save all we can in areas where that's a possibility. We see salary and wages one of those possibilities. So departments don't have to do a lot to get those numbers in place, so they're provided to them. And they come in a spreadsheet like this. This is my department. As you can see, there's a lot of information across it. Just so you can get a sense for all that we do provide. The place that the departments have to send a lot of information is laid out in some detail in this is your line item budget out of our fund specific. It's the next document. Many pages tells you by each department or each division. Revenue down flat, or projecting how much expenditures are expected to be. We do look historically to see what those have been. We also have great relationships with our directors so that they thought it very carefully before they come and ask for something, or they ask to spend it. They thought it very, very, very carefully, and they know that they'll have to justify that. But this is the kind of data that the departments put together. This is what the other programs always put together for us. So that we know every line item is spent. There's a little more flexibility here when you start to see things like the nature of the expenditures changing And I'll give you an example, not inside CRA, but we have a fairly significant medical contract in our detention center because we're responsible for medical care of our inmates. That's a number that can drastically change from year to year. I won't say it, but it never does. It's those contracts, and there's not as many of them as CRA as there are a lot of other departments. Well, you've got to start looking at those in November, December, January to see how your contracts are going to change. So those are the big changes you would see on line items in any department budget. You certainly would see them in CRA also. Open a new facility, you might see, utilities go up or down. You might see, you change the hours, you're going to see some changes in other costs. So when you're making the decision of bringing you up an extra hour, it's not without cost to do that. And unfortunately, over the years, we've been through, we're coming out of the recession, and I think we're doing fairly well. But because in going through a recession, people in county services need more than they ever need. So our costs go up, and revenues go down significantly. And one thing that we've done at CRA is to say, you don't have to compete with social services and detention and public safety. And that's been a challenge because CRA is not a limited service. It's just, there's not anything in it that we actually have to provide. Now, we have significant capital investment in CRA. It's not something you can just, my position has always been when someone says, well, let's just contract that out. Well, when you're contracting out a service, it's one thing. When you're contracting out something that has huge capital investment with it, and you decide that goes away, to make that capital investment, and if it doesn't work, is a really serious decision. So we look at that a lot different. But there has been a lot of competition, so I would say CRA expenditures have held pretty much flat. And we've had to have some cuts over time, and that's included cuts in the hours of operation that we have. Those are not really going to come from anybody. The CRA has had the least increase of anybody because of the level of services that have to be provided versus some of our other departments. About 85% of our budget is in human services, public safety, and education. So there's not a lot of discretion with the rest of the budget anyhow. I don't expect you to read all of these. I just want you to know that there is absolute supporting documentation for every cent that is budgeted in the course of putting this or any other county budget together. But you also might want to take a look at it, and sometimes it's very surprising what it costs to provide certain services. Questions so far? Lots of information. One of the things that you'll find is every meeting, I think Ed and Fran are giving you updates on where you actually stand budget to action, and how your budget is looking. We do have some policies in the county that say May 15th, your purchase orders are done. If we're going to spend every May 15th, it needs to be an emergency. Things that we can kind of lock down and not let you. Sometimes I probably should have said something. We don't want you to have a lot of discretion in those last 6 weeks or so to run out and spend money because it's there. And if you get to May, you've been afraid to go out and spend a whole lot for fear you would have a year-end expenditure. So there's some psychology behind it that all of us have to live with every day, but we do put expenditures on fairly early. And we also account for capital projects in a different fund. We don't account for those in your general operating fund. But you will get reports every month from through CRA on the actual. And like I said, with your programs, you might see PAC library and the expenditure every month. You're going to see very little recreation where that's going to be an expenditure. It's much more apt to be very cyclical. We look at any questions on the basic part of how we got to program operational budgets. Because this is information, we do all we can to provide it. We have this history for a number of years that we've taken a look at and sit down and talk with every director as they read the budget. Things that will give you, and take the most of your time, and it certainly takes a lot of commissioners' time, are really on the next few pages. If you look at the first page, page, it says Buncombe County Community Fund, and it's the applicant list. We get a lot of requests from outside agencies. It looks like this, it's right behind that last, the line item. This is the list of people who apply for funding. And then we had to, if you move on to the list right behind it, we had to break it down and say, now, we can have CRA funding more than this, but we knew that it was a possibility. So if we were going to have CRA, this is an expenditure that if you would choose to make the board of commissioners choose to make this investment, are you going to make it in general fund, or does this really belong to us as social recreation authority? And you can see that on this sheet, and on the right-hand column just tells you basically it's going to sign out to either CRA or general fund.
Yeah, for some reason, I'm not finding that.
Okay. That's why I get trying to put something together in the midst of, yeah, these are the two sheets that I talked about. And then the third one that you see is where we actually came up with how much would go to the K level general fund and how much we would actually say CRA. These are really cultural recreation authority related expenses. The commissions have decided we will fund those, but they appropriately belong to the authority. So that you can see what people had to do to ask for money, I just asked budget to pull me a couple of applications from last year, so that you can see the kind of information that put together to say, I need $30,000, or this one is Big Ivy Communities, they need $24,750. Here's the impact they'll have on the community, here's what they're going to do with it. It lays out the results we can expect to see in the community by making this investment. And if I could depart just a second, we will be soon sending out applications. I think they've actually are going out now. So when organizations decide they want to apply, we're bringing those through one process, and that's in our finance department. But you get the application and complete it, and that's how it makes the list for request for funding. And that's how these made the list last year. We did something a little different last year because we had a new board, a district board, and a lot of folks didn't know everybody was asking for money. And those who were around might not have known everybody was asking for money. So we had all the people who made the request come in and make a presentation. One, to introduce themselves, two, to talk about what they really wanted and the impact they would have on the community if they were funded. It was a good process, and it was a very long meeting. And some of it just tore at your heart, and others it's like, you step back and go, oh wow, I wouldn't have thought to ask for that. So just the gamut was running, really, for all the requests that came in. Some of them were for capital, and some of them for operating costs. And we asked them to be very clear about that. And some organizations actually made two requests, one for operating costs and one for capital. So that's, it's a laborious process that really does take a lot of commissioners' time. And it starts in a lot of conversation. And I suspect that we do the same for you when they come in. So you can see the ones, if you go back to the pages in front, these are the ones that ended up being funded. Some of them have a long history of being funded by the county, that place being one of those. Some have not been funded for very long. I will tell you, one of the ones, like Ironman Triathlon was a request, not knowing we could get the event, and we didn't, but had to have money there, because you were going to get it. One of the things that I will, as this budget comes together, we will not be bringing back to CRA the handmade request. That is really a real estate issue more than it's a funding, it's a program issue. So that's one that will not come back to CRA going forward. But hopefully, as you look at the applications that came in, you can see the kind of information that people did provide in order to get the money. Well, we're fast at it again. The process hasn't changed a whole lot in terms of what we provide in departments and what we ask in departments. This is still early week. I put this in your package so you can see there is a very detailed process, and this is the most paper that's been printed about budget in forever, is what I brought today, because we do all of it electronically. But there's a process that every department has to follow in order to submit the 2016 budget request. One of the things that they have already submitted are capital requests, with the exception of CRA. Those that come in for the most part in November. But we thought you needed a little more time to see some of the facilities, to think about what you really need. And I think from that perspective, you've got to go in two different ways. We have existing facilities, and you really see a couple that really do need some work. We've had the indoor pool on the capital plan. Should have been done in 2008, it was not allowed in the budget. I mean, there was no, without raising taxes that were very, very difficult. We could not afford that. But now we're at a point where that has become a very high priority, or we're going to be without a covered pool. We are getting calls already, saying how do you apply? And anybody who's requested the application process, and I gave it to you whether it's county or CRA. You see the list of who's made a request to receive an application, and that application is the last thing in the package. Y'all have a lot of plate in a really short period of time. I hope you can see we try to get as much good information as we can to the departments so that they can make reasonable and responsible requests. And I would say, I think they all do. We get into discussions about if they want to do something new, or if they'd like to move money from one place to conveniently call it, they want to repurpose their money. We have a discussion about repurposing or reinvesting that money somewhere else. But there is a very detailed process that we go through. And we do this very much in the public eye, so we have to have good line item detail. We have to be able to report that every week. We do a dashboard, so the commissioners know by function of government where we stand for the year. And overall county expenses don't behave just in a straight line either. So you might see if the debt payment is made in July, it's going to stay red until May, before you begin to see that it's not really a problem, but we watch those very closely. I watch those every day. I get them. The departments actually can at any time pull it up and see where they stand. But I can tell you, they know with every invoice they process where they stand, how much is left, what they got to do. Very aware of vacancies when they have. They're also very aware that we'll be taking that money to offset the fund balance as we go forward. I want to answer any questions that you have about it.
So I was looking at the art museum. Our capital expenditures going to go through the commissioners or through the CRA?
They're going to come first to CRA for your recommendation to the commission.
Okay.
And if you recommend it, if it's a capital request for something we own, the debt service will be paid through the grant.
Right.
If it's a capital gift of funds, it'll cost. But I do think that first analysis and cut has, and recommendation has to come to the CRA. Belongs to the board of commissioners.
Where are we in this process for this year? I appreciate this 2015 sheet. Is there a deadline? Are we past that?
We bought a piece of software and had to wait to get that installed, so the applications have just gone out, and we'll continue to get calls, and would encourage, if you hear from anyone, if they'll call Diane Price in the budget office, finance office, we will get them access to the application packages and online application.
And is there a deadline?
Yes, there is. I knew I should have looked at that. It's a very short time period. Turnaround is like 2 or 3 weeks. So we should have those to you. Can you make it better? I'll double check that.
So is there a communication to the public at large about the availability of these applications and things?
It is on our website, but we don't know if we want to communicate it to them unless they're looking at our website. We don't want to buy an article on front page of paper that says, send an application, we have cash if we don't have cash. So that person. So a lot of it's done word of mouth, and some of it's reaction a lot of that takes place over time. So the website's the best place we've found to do that without going out and having people believe that there's a ton of money coming in and ask for it. I will double check it. I think I have those to you. We decided for simplicity, we would have all the applications come into one place, which is Diane Price in the budget office, and then she will route them to the appropriate, she'll route them to CRA, and we'll begin to make the list for the commissioners to consider on the rest of it. If you look at what we do fund, which is on one of these pages, you can see we actually fund a whole lot more in the general fund area than we do in the CRA, because it's consistent with the services that we provide.
And I just add to what Wanda said, since I've been on the board, there's a lot of ways to do this, both on the commission and the CRA. At one time, we had a community fund that had a set amount, and it was kind of a competitive bidding thing. We kind of went away from that, and with the new board, we haven't really got down the weeds and talked a lot about it, other than, well, I shouldn't say that. We've talked about it a lot. I would say we spend more time on the community funding than probably any other part of the budget. But that being said, I think this commission, and I think this board, knowing you as I have at the time, we just want to get things done that need to be done. And so I don't know we have, okay, we've got this much money, this is all you can possibly ever get, or the commission takes a position as you will compete against this for this money. I think I never thought that was real healthy, and I think the rest of the board kind of said, let's not pit people against each other and say, I only have so much money, sorry. When we're out, we're out. It depends on what we need to do here, and that's kind of a harder thing, really, than having a set budget or saying we're going to do exactly what we did last year. So we're going to have to think about it, and there are going to be there's no bad applications on this. There's not a single one that I'd say, boy, that's just terrible, they applied. They all have merit, and the question is, where do we go? Both from the commission, for Joe and Ellen, and for the rest, for this board to make the recommendation and/or to make the funding. We've got to really think about these things, and I think you're all thoughtful and know what's coming. And it's good when we get them all. I can foresee a time when we're going to sit down and just go through them. And we could have a presentation here. It was a long one. I think we spent about, an hour and a half? 2 hours maybe.
More.
Yeah, 3 hours. Ben says Ben sat through. That was the last one. Okay, oh boy.
I'm not going to get to the army, but I still thought it was really helping in a good way too.
I think when,
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, probably one of the requests that ripped everybody's heart out was for $1,800. I think that we would almost have been able to open wallets and include it that day. Before it was really very emotional. Some of the others where they want a big block of money for capital takes a lot of decision making. I will tell you that one of the other things to consider is we do not have one of the applications I brought with me out of the community. They run a swimming pool out there, have for years and years and years. And it costs $1 million or more to actually build another swimming pool. And then the operating expense far exceeds what we provide them. So unless you're willing and ready to put a pool on your capital plan, that's something you have to consider when you're considering your request. I probably have a different theory than most about how do you do your capital. I think that there are things that have to be done. I mean, there's real issues of you've got facilities, you've got things that you need to have major maintenance, but they just reach the end of life. I mean, a big room facility is probably reaching the end of life, even if we renovate it. Right? But also, if you're going to make a contribution and take it forward in the community, if you're going to advance quality of life here, you've got to do a little bit of drilling to say, I'd like to have, if you can have all the things and say, we can have all these things like Billy, but then you do have to go through and prioritize those. But if we never determine what you really like to see it be like in a few years, we don't have anywhere to go. And so that's the kind of thing you have to start planning for the longer haul. We've got plans that you've seen on Greg Ways and the sports department, like Julian, things that have been put in place, just planning processes have been put in place. But I do think you have to think forward a little bit so that it may not be in the capital plan for 10 years. But it's not going to be there at all unless somebody comes up with it and says, we need to start thinking about, do we want to do this? Schools, college schools, they have to start thinking that it might be a little easier to look at them. You can look at overcrowding, you can look at all these other things, but you can't just put a school on the ground and get it paid for in a matter of 30 or 60 days. You've got to plan how it should look like 3 or 4 years from now when we'll get started. And I think that's a lot of what your capital planning needs to include, where you really want to be. And then that gives commissioners the information they need to say, now, how does this fit the overall capital planning? But if we just deal with what's in our face at the moment, we don't figure out how we're going to leave it any better than when it was first started. But that's not a theory.
I think too, what all of us noticed last year was there were a lot of implicit error, a lot of very similar grants being made, and if I could encourage any groups that have the same common goal to work together and spread that money out, sure.
We do have a large number of nonprofits in this community.
We were able to, last year, to put some recommended guidelines for them to do, and I was real pleased when we went to the Buncombe County Services.
The County Community Service Foundation?
Yes, Community Service Foundation, how they had taken these lists and actually did performance on, and looked at it in ways to improve and better. And so that was very, very helpful in helping to, as Mr. Paul said, to make sure they're doing a good job, not just a job, make sure they're doing a good job, because we got to do a good job, make sure everybody's doing a good job. So.
And we do have them under performance contracts. If they say they're going to perform these certain things, we want to see those measures, we want to see if they've actually done those things. I don't know what you find in the bottom of it. And those are not all, nothing about county government is black and white, this rule fits everything. There's a lot of gray on this rule. But so sometimes they can make progress, but they don't make as much as good. We do want to run performance contracts.
I have just a budgeting management issue or a question. The 3.5 cents nets a flat amount of money. And we have the expenses, the lion's share of the expenses are maintenance of existing and operations of existing facilities, libraries, recreational facilities. And then we have this little category, which is groups that come requesting monies. So if the facilities committee of the CRA comes back with a priority capital plan, let's say we want to do a swimming pool, and we want to do East Asheville Library, we want to implement some piece of the Greenland Master Plan. How are those capital needs addressed? Is that recommended to the commissioners? And the commissioners, I think this is your question, Ellen, does this go to the commissioners and they, with our recommendation, and they figure it out? I'm looking for the mechanism for capital funding and where the debt service goes, and your advice on figuring out, do we lock off some of these nonprofit things to pay that debt service? How do you see that structure?
I do see the debt service being paid by the CRA for the capital that benefits the CRA, and there's debt service in there, and now for some things we've done in the past. A couple of things change your budget. One is debt pays off. So every year that number, until you do something new, is paying down on that. We have pretty good growth in our community. We're beginning to see some things turn around, some construction, and just some growth in the tax base itself. So a penny will bring you more than it brought you this year. So the combination of those two, if you put them together, you can see what giving the commissioners a priority list, it also helps us figure, from my perspective, helps us figure, might there be a creative way that we can do this? I think we're pretty decent at that. And there's different ways that you can do about finances and things that might buy you a year, but at the same time, we look at anything that generates data over a year period so that we know what's happening. And we're very on ours.
I think you're a little better than decent at that. Pretty good at that. But to me, as you pay them down, there's going to be X dollars available. If you stayed at this last year, there'll be X dollars. Let's say there's $400,000 in payments. Well, there'll be, you know, you may be able to get down to funding down $500,000 based on that. But whatever the debt service is on that is what's going to happen. You know, and of course you provide that, and so if it's whatever it was, then we would know what the debt service would be on that, and whether it would be within that 3.5 cents.
We sure would. From a county perspective, we try to make sure that if the number is here, that we're using capacity as a case now, but we're not increasing this overall number. But it's enabled us to do a number of things by using that capacity and planning a number of years out. And that's, we've done a lot by utilizing that and staying on focus for the 10, 15 year mark.
So if there was a financing mechanism involved for major capital project, that would go through the commissioners, and the commissioners would set that up, or would that come back to the CRA to set up?
CRA doesn't have the authority to issue debt, so it has to come through the commissioner.
Commissioners, okay. That's what
The best way it's been explained to me is, Wanda, correct me if I'm wrong about this, basically we have a mortgage. And, you know, like your house mortgage, you pay it down if you, I don't know if you, do they do, is it, you pay interest first on the account? I don't know if it's like a mortgage, it's probably different.
It is different in government. You have to make even principal payments, which is not the way a mortgage works.
But
Flat payment.
basically we issue bonds instead of mortgage. And we, you know, it's a bond, as we paid off McCormick Field the past couple of years. We paid off the debt to the airport. Well, that's a pretty big one. They were like $6 million and $8 million for the airport, I believe, over time. And so that's a pretty big drop. And, you know, that's where finance and Dr. Green did brilliant and have a AAA rating. And the last bond issue, which doesn't mean we'll get this again, the last bond issue, Buncombe County got a 2.7% interest rate. So that's pretty good. That's pretty good. Now, can't guarantee that next time, but we're going to try. And we have the highest rating you can have because, you know, politics, everything aside, individuals aside, the money people look at how you handle the money. Are you doing a good job? We don't care who you are or where you're from. We want to know, are you good money managers? And they have said, yes, you're one of the best in the country.
And they look at the stability of your community too. I mean, what are your economics there? What is your unemployment? What kind of, if you go next door to Taylor County, there is one industry over there. Anything happens to that one industry, yes, they lack diversity in their employment base. And we don't. We're very fortunate in Buncombe County to have diversity in our base. While you never want an employer to leave, it's not devastating to us like it would be to some other communities and mountains. So there's it's like a 100-page document. You learn a lot. One of the things I can tell you that we were asked many years ago was, what's the length of the runway? And it's like, well, we had no clue. I mean, we said it's like we had no clue. That one of the assistant managers said, well, we have landed Air Force One in Concord, so that was long enough for them to be out here. But it's 8,002 feet. You never forget those answers when you can't answer. One of the other things that we're going to do, the commissioners will hear about this later this afternoon, when you issue bonds, those can't be called. You can't cancel that debt until certain dates. That's the agreement you basically make with your investors who are taking a chance on you. And so we watch those constantly, and when we reach a call date and we refinance for a lesser rate, we do that, and we do have two refinances because we reach call date on a couple of these things. So we watch those all the time, but there's only about 5 of us in the county that do watch it. With focus on that and how it fits the overall picture of the town. So I don't know, I think we're close to paying off several of the CRA. PAC's probably the newest debt that we have. Yes, there is. We try to keep it under, I wish I could think it off the top of my head, but we really try to keep it under a certain percentage. And we're consistently better at that than the other big urban counties in North Carolina. Ours is much lower debt percentage. And then we also watch very closely. You actually have the authority to issue far more debt than anybody would be comfortable issuing, but you also have to raise your tax rate to do that. One of the things we'll bring the commissioners is we try to keep our, about 60 to 70% of our debt in 10 years. As the debt rolls, and that's seen as very valuable. Technology, you can't finance it for 5 years. Real estate, you can finance max 20 years, except for some stuff. We'll be financing some education stuff, what's what we're doing now. I do think it'd be fair to say that we start with, let's figure out how to do it, not know we can't.
I guess one smaller question I have is, I guess this year we're sort of functioning as a unit of the county, and at the time, this becomes the authority. How does the behavior of this board impact your credit rating and so forth as a county? Does it separate somehow here in the future, or even we didn't know how we can support what you're trying to do in making decisions as well?
The CRA was given any authority in the legislation to issue that. You have to come back to the county and ask them to issue that for you. So we would look at that request as it lines up with the other things we're financing.
So we're always going to be going basically to the commissioners for approval, so there's going to be an oversight. That's good.
Yeah, I think the general assembly was pretty clear, that's what they wanted.
Right.
Wanda, a legal question, of course, what else would you expect from me? And this probably hasn't been addressed yet, actually, Ellen and Joe and David, but we're charged under the resolution to make recommendations and an annual report to the county. Is there a particular format that should take? Does Ed send something to you all? Is that, how does the CRA comply legally with the obligation report to the county? Or has that even been addressed yet?
Well, right now, it's still in our system, so the reports come out.
Is there a format for the report? I guess I'm looking at this paragraph 14 here that says we're supposed to make these reports. Is that something we send it in and you say, well, that's all right, or you say, better get another lawyer and do it right?
I don't think we've come up with a format yet, but I think we look at a financial format with some performance accomplishments. The nice thing is they didn't tie it down and say it had to look like ABC, and I just don't think we reached a point of even thinking that.
So basically, some type of resolution from the beginning to David as the chairman, and to you, and to the other commissioners, so that would satisfy the duty of getting that report to the county.
And you're going to do that through the budget process, because every year the commissioners have to set the tax rate to fund these for it. So they're going to be, I think the reports will come at that point in time.
I seem to remember this from an earlier meeting where we talked about the budget. But if you have an item in the current year fiscal year budget that did not use that money, for example, we are presenting $250,000, and we get to the end of the year, fiscal year, and that money has not been utilized, what happens to that $250,000?
So let me answer that two ways. One is the $250,000 we were instructed to set into reserve until the RBCN had accomplished certain things. So that money really won't be available. It will be moved to a reserve. If you look at the $340,000 for the U.S. Cellular Center, that's the last payment on that one. So that you have to pass it. That's not a recurring expense for you, but it is included in the
So I'm assuming when we get into that budget process, you're going to be with us and go through this and say, this is not going to occur this year.
Yes, I could probably, actually, I might have those and send it back to you. That's probably correct.
Because that would change, yeah.
Yeah, it would. There's not a lot of one-time payments on it. That is certainly one of them.
But I want to echo something Wanda said earlier. One of the really enjoyable parts of being a commissioner and being on this board is that it's better to approach it, what do we need? And we have some really bright, gifted people that can, I mean, there's some things, we can't do. We need a new, Sam would probably agree, we need a new civic center. But that's a lot of money, that's a big one. We probably can't quite do that. But we also need to talk about it. We need to get with Sam in the city. He needs to give a presentation about what they're doing. We probably need to meet over there. Go through. So it's kind of a three-way part. We've got the things we've done consistently. What do we want to do? What does this board collectively want to do? And then, just about as important as what do we need to be doing 5 and 10 years from now. So we have a bullseye that we know if we hit it or not. If we don't have a bullseye, we can't know if we're accomplishing what we're supposed to, what we're charged to do. And that's the good part. And maybe it moves up. Maybe it. I know there are people that said we'd never build a courthouse. Not in your lifetime. Jack, you probably heard that many times. Said, well,
I've
you had not seen that. Probably said that. And there'll never be a new Asheville middle school. It'll never happen. I mean, these things. I think it's just what's the will and how much do we want to put into it. But I think that is going to be an enjoyable part of our roles here. Is saying this is what we need. Okay, maybe we can't do it. Maybe not in 5 years, but you really need to do this so that we're not reactive and we're being more proactive. None of you are reactive in your business, or you try not to be. Sometimes you have to be, but proactive is better, and then visionary is even better than that. And we won't be able to do everything we want, but if we don't know, I want us to talk about what we want, and that's why these committees are good. That's why it's good for us to sit and dream and set it out, so that maybe there may be another mechanism, there may be another way to get there. We didn't know about it.
And to go on what David was saying, in animal welfare, in the year 2000, where we are now, is the place where we never dreamed we would be. Never, ever, ever did we really think we could aspire to these goals. But it was such a collaborative effort among brave commissioners. You really utilize the people in the community, and that's why I can't stress, over and over again, if groups work together collectively instead of thinking, oh, I have the best idea and I'm smarter than that group. It took this huge collaboration, but it didn't cost a lot of public money. It was just this great collaborative effort. So everything that you're saying, just having that visionary attitude of, we were in a dump of a garage in an animal shelter to envision where we are now. It's extraordinary, but it took everything Dave was talking about.
And I think that's the kind of bottom line of CRA.
Yeah.
I think, the commissioners have done this traditionally, and we do this among all the other things we do. And I think I was real excited, and again, I don't want to take too much more time, but I was really excited we have a chance to really sit down and put it under the microscope, libraries, cultural, greenways, parks, and sit down with the directors, which we don't have the privilege to do as much as we like, and really get into deep down into what do you want to happen, and we've already learned a lot of things about libraries and parks that we didn't know when we started on this group. And so there's just so much more to learn, and I think look ahead. And I think this board's up for doing it. I think all of you have done it in your respective businesses, and that's our charge. It didn't say it in the thing, but I think that's kind of understood that instead of the commissioners doing it like you've always done it, like every other commissioner pretty much across the country does it, we want you to do something different. and we want you to have a different product. It's an opportunity.
Can I say two more things? I want to re-answer your question. The $250,000 in art museum would not be available this year if you opted to fund something different with those monies next year. So that wasn't the quote, I was just saying that it is available to spend next year.
And that's voted on every year.
Yes.
So can you say that again?
If you look at this, you get to this total and take that $250,000, it's not going to go to what your savings account.
Right,
This year,
right,
because
yes.
we're really concerned. But it is available within this amount of money, and you choose to spend that amount of money next year. And
Basically zero is right.
basically, yes, and on those. And the other thing that came up that probably caught me a little bit off guard is we talked about community funding when we take applications. There's the community restoration grants that never come out to the commissioner. That's a this board decision. And that funding, it's varied a lot in terms of over the years how much money's been in there, but that is not something that comes back to the commissioners.
Which things are those?
It was 42,000 last year, so it's
Is that what we did? That's our committee?
Yeah,
That's what we do.
They usually $4,000 or $5,000 or something like that. It's almost like, if not for some other money, they're not going to get that project. But those are, I don't want to mix up community funding and community recreation grants. Does it clarify anything for you? There is a process we go through, it's pretty intense.
Well, a couple things too, as we're all, to Dave's point, I've learned a lot by listening to these folks and going to assets and look at it. And you got asset protection that is a certain that, whether it be cool or whatever it is, that maybe it's getting to the point where you need to figure out, what you're going to do. And you have to visionary things together, things you might want to do. But then you say what capacity is. But there'll be a certain amount of capacity, depending on, there'll be a certain amount of capacity within 3.5 cents. A certain amount of capacity. And then you'll be able to tell us what that can do.
And we can do that.
Really good.
And the really, I would brag on our tax department, we only run our collection rate. That's pretty much unheard of, so that makes the penny go a long way.
So, Mr. Chairman, will we in February, given that this deadline is 2 or 3 weeks from when it starts running set, will we have a meeting of this board where these presenters come in? They're requesting this money so we can make a recommendation to the commission.
That'd be a board decision. That's what we did last year. The commission did that last year. It's something we need to discuss. Great question. While Dr. Green's here, let's hold that one because we need to get back to that about how to present, how the applicants present. Any other questions for Dr. Green while she's here?
I think it's an opportunity for me. I think there's an opportunity to bring there's a reality to still run that programs and balance.
And see, one of the other things about the opportunities is that we're pretty unique. I think I beat that in everybody's, I think we beat you up the first meeting about how unique it is. That lends grant and funding opportunities that we didn't have before. And, we have to lead and say, this is what we want, this is what we need to work on. And, we get to that point, we ask staff to be working that. I mean, they're working it now, but working specifics. If we want an aquatic center, we want a pool, there are probably some things we can do that we couldn't do as a commission because we're an unusual, unique board. And I think there will be funding people that will say, we'll see if this works. And we can partner with people. People love to see entities do things together. We already have 2 partners, CRA and Buncombe County. Maybe we can do partner with some other people to do regional things. There's a lot of possibilities that we probably didn't have before because we're different legal entities. Any other questions for Dr. Green?
Well, thank y'all, appreciate you letting me take time with you today.
Yes. See you soon. Joe, Helen, and I will see you very soon. Okay. Thank you. Yeah, we really are fortunate, and I think you said introduce one the way I did. Let's take up Karen's question. I think that's fair to, because we are on a tight timeline. And I know it would be good if we had a whole year. We're having to really go fast. And I know that that's probably not Ed.
I'd recommend that we will get the application sent over by the county goes office. We'd like staff to have a little bit of time to work with those, make sure their complete questions are answered. And I think we may want to consider using the committee as the first review of those applications, because the deadline that Wanda was talking about, in my understanding, is when those applications are due to the county. I don't think we're going to have to, as a board, make those decisions in February. I think that can happen possibly at the March meeting when we actually begin this board. So that would be my recommendation, is staff have a little time to review, set up a meeting with our committee, and then our committee report to the board. And the whole board wants to hear all the applicants, and that might, I think that's something I'd recommend the committee at least have the first go with that.
And let me ask you, Sam, I don't know if you know this, I think that's the city council. Isn't there a committee of the city council that reviews community?
There is. There's an outside agency.
And then they don't come to the full council. They kind of take the recommendations, or do you know? Sorry to put you on the spot. It seems like the mayor's told me how they did it that way. I'm not sure.
I can clarify pretty quickly for you, but there is an outside agency committee. It is a subcommittee of the city's Housing and Community Development Committee. They look at requests for funding from outside agencies. That then ultimately does come back to city council for approval.
And do they they hear it again?
They hear the recommendations.
Just
The
the
full
recommendations.
council does not hear each of the requests for funding.
And we've, in the county commission's done it two different ways. We just got up and people just talked among ourselves, no presentation, no committee, and then we voted on it. And then last year, we had 5 new commissioners, and we heard everybody. And, we'll decide how we want to do that again. There are merits in all ways, all 3 ways of doing it.
For the sake of discussion and questions, Ed, are you talking about the committee that Joe chairs that's reviewing this?
Yes, that would be a possibility. Again, what I would envision would be staff ranks the applications, and that could be a detailed ranking as to even down to the opinion level, but at least make sure they're complete and questions are answered. And then staff would make that presentation to the committee. I think the key thing possibly the committee would deal with is how to handle the presentation. So I'm right now not prepared to advise you on how to handle that. You may want to do that in committee. You may want to say at the March board meeting, that will be what happens there. So I'm not going, in other words, I'm not going that far. I'm just thinking the committee should have the first look at these, and based on that, make a recommendation to the board on how to proceed.
Would the committee leave any out though? Would your committee stop with it?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm not.
I feel like it's really, I think I'm with Alan, I feel like it's really important, particularly as this is the first year for the CRA, for all of us to be part of this initiative and to hear those presentations.
Yeah.
That people want to give them. And I think the will of the commissioners in terms of whether or not they want to hear them, I mean, I could double some of you all's time, but I think that's the will of the commission in terms of how.
Right, that's a separate, yeah.
But I would imagine that we would all, 7 of us, hear these presentations and maybe recommend a number of them, certain ones of them forward
And we wouldn't be hearing all the community, just the ones that affect cultural recreation.
Right, that's right.
A lot of, I mean, they're gonna be the first line. There's gonna be some that's gonna be no before they get to it.
I don't, why is that?
That's what she said.
Well-
she wanted to do.
I can answer that because they're the ones that.
Well, they might not qualify.
But I mean, the maybe it's just, well, I can't answer that, so I'm not.
We don't qualify for, there's 50 applicants, and we can listen to 50 presentations.
Yeah, we are, that's why we're here, I think, really. If they're qualified and they fill out all the paperwork, and that's why we're here. I mean, I really feel strongly about that. I think taxpayers have it on us. It's on us to make these decisions, not on them. But, you know,
Other thoughts?
I mean, wouldn't want to be a part of somebody calling me on the phone and saying, did you never hear about my request?
Well, I don't want to leave the impression that commissioners had no information for the first 16 years that I did that. I mean, we had the applications, we had what they said, pretty much what you have in front of us here. So, you know, I think,
And I mean,
I can't say all the commissioners, I'd say most commissioners read through every word and saw it. So, you know, we would have information, but, you know.
and I think we gave them, it was like 2 or 3 minutes, it was like speed dating. I mean, it was quick, but it sure gave us a better name with a face.
I agree with Ellen. Same way.
Okay. Well, I'll just take that as a motion to set up a conference with all the applicants of our area's cultural recreation and have them present a short presentation in addition to the screened and the prioritized, staff prioritized list that we get from them. That cover what you, and I'll take that as
A second.
motion, Tessier, motion, Tessier, second, thoughts. Okay, any other discussions on that? So basically, we would commit to hear people out, give them, we will have their applications beforehand, like you've got the ones from last year, and then they would come and give a presentation, and we would say 3, we have what, and we can change what the application looks like, if we really wanted to, for our area.
And are they gonna meet some requirements before they come to us? I mean, because you guys come in,
Well, we
you
can,
know, you're one person, I know this is not what you
Yeah.
refer to, then you're one person, you decide, hey, you know, $5,000, I'm talking to.
why can't we just follow what the county
I
does?
think what they've done in the past is probably along the lines of what she's talking. They're going to do whatever they normally would do as far as reviewing and have them meet whatever guidelines. Then I think you're big as we just want to talk. Right?
Yeah, I don't want, but I don't want some enough to make the cut. Is my point. I'd like to mirror how the county does it.
Okay? And so use the county guidelines this year, just, except for we'll be listening.
Yeah. Is that it?
So 100% of the applicants will listen.
Do the paperwork and, yeah.
All right, any discussion?
Is that mirroring what the county has done in the past?
What did last year?
I think we did, but I think before it got to us, I think there was some work that was done here, which is maybe not, maybe it was.
I think there was screening. I believe finance screening.
So-
Yeah, finance does
Okay,
it.
I am okay with doing, mirroring what we have done in the past. Can I do a friendly amendment? To take a motion, or was it yours?
I think I would test it.
Okay. And that we speak to all the applicants, mirroring what we've done, staff mirroring what we've done in the past, as far as, you know, whatever we're trying to do. I'm sorry not to say that, but mirroring what we've done in the past, and I will be fine with it.
Okay, so basically, just the friendly amendment adopt the past policies of the county in receipt and analysis of applications, and we hear them all. understand what we have in front of us? Okay, any other discussion? All right, I'll call a question. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Motion.
May I ask a follow-up question?
Yes, ma'am.
At an earlier meeting, maybe in November, December, Dr. Green said that we needed to have budget to commissioners sometime on February. And we're talking about a March meeting. And we have some counsel on when we need to get this done so that we get this budget done as Dr. Green has requested.
What are the, will we meet the deadline?
I think for particularly this part of the budget, the deadline for us will be more flexible, because this, in effect, we're taking on some work that in the past was done by the Board of Commissioners. So I'll talk with Dr. Green about that, but I feel reasonably comfortable in saying that if we did this process in late February or early March, we would be fine as far as getting her the information she needs. And I'll verify that with her. So we won't be able to make those recommendations, in effect, they're not part of the operating budget, which is the salaries and basic line items that we're working on right now. I think we're okay.
When do we hear them all? Remember? Was it in February?
I want to say the first time I saw the list was February 9th. The 8 million list or whatever.
Well, we have the capacity to change the deadline.
I just don't know.
I don't remember either.
We need to, that's why we have 3 commissioners on this board.
But,
I'm good. The other possibility would be to have a second meeting on the 25th.
yeah.
So what we pleasure report on that? Have it for the 11th. Or, I guess, let's see. No, we don't have any more.
Mr. Chairman, I would recommend, when we receive the applications from the county, because we're dependent on that to get the information to us, then I'll get in touch with you about how to schedule from that point on. The process, I know, is starting a little later this year. One that alluded to the new software that the county's implementing. And I'm not sure, are those applications, I think they are posted now. The recreation this week. So it'll be this, for the community development grants, it's going to be posted this week. Do you know what the deadline is for the
I
We'll verify that, but I don't think we can settle that right now.
All right.
I'll get with you on those dates.
Okay. We will see if we need to have a meeting. So we right now we're for the 11th. Okay. Good. All right, anything else on the budget? It's a loaded question. Anything today for the budget? There'll be plenty more to talk about the budget. Okay. Let's get a report from the facilities committee. Thank you all for meeting. I'm sorry I missed that one. I heard that good. Spokesperson.
Steve and I talked about the research thing I thought we had a really good meeting. 4 members were there. Just remind folks who that is. We have Mr. Johnson on this. Mr. Kern. Remember the names, of course, Mr. Frost and Mr. Riggs. So 4 of those folks are present. We've got to be talking about immediately discussing the progress on the action item. Steve, would you like to pass those on? Yes,
I can discuss those action items.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fine. So, as you probably figured out, I was voted the chairman of the facilities committee.
Unanimous,
We had a very good meeting, and there was, of course, a lot of trying to learn many years of what's going on in a matter of minutes. So, but I think that was pretty well. So the two things that came out of those two action items that came out of that meeting, the committee voted to recommend that the CRA board name the new Collier property and trails, the Collier Cove Nature Preserve. I'd like to present this as an action item to the full CRA board. The other action item is we voted to recommend that the board move the priority of advanced planning for the greenways in 2015. It was previously 2016, so it's fiscal year 2015. But not ahead of the two previously defined priorities, which were the sort of full review, East National. So I can say that also as an action item to the full board.
Chairman, just as a reminder, the county property is 30 acres. That's a South Ashland, beautiful piece of property with great views. Certainly fortunate to have that family working with us and trying to preserve that property for the climate. Talked about the Lake Julian property. The Lake Julian project extension is moving along, and that's where we're extending the property that's behind the old Roadhouse restaurant. It's currently being reconstructed to be Wild Wings Cafe, or whatever the name of that is. And we are reconstructing the parking lot space there, just in there, and continuing the trails from the primary Lake Julian Park and all around that way. So that'll be 0.4 little mile, I guess. Additional trails that will have, and we'll serve around, will be handicap accessible, so excited about that as well. It's a project that's starting up right now. One of the things Mike mentioned real quick before we take action, the committee voted to hold another meeting on February 6th, Thursday, 2014. We're going to depart from 200 College Street at around 8:30 a.m. We're going to visit the Buncombe Recreation Center.
Very good. Thank you. Sounds like you had a productive meeting. So Mr. Kern has moved to name the Collier property the Collier Cove Nature Preserve. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ellen. Any discussion?
Would you mind if I just said something?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
I believe the policy for the county of naming of properties, that this does meet that definition of that policy, and my thought would be that this would come as recommendation from this board to the county commissioners for their acceptance of that name.
Very good. I will see to it that this gets on. If we pass this, we'll get this on the calendar. Our next meeting is today, actually, but we got, it's the 4th that we are, that's the official full meeting. Okay, any discussion? All those in favor of naming the Collier property, or recommending that Collier property be the Collier Cove Nature Preserve, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. The recommendation is, and then we have another recommendation to move ahead the Greenway planning to 15, but not ahead of the Goodner Pool and East Branch Library priorities. Is there a second to that? Oh,
I've got some questions on that.
okay.
I believe in our discussion, correct me if I'm wrong, there was moving of advanced planning and implementation. Wasn't that 2015?
We were looking at starting the plans and start to come up with some plans to move forward into 16.
Because we said that we couldn't plan on implementing until we know the plan.
Okay, so the motion would be for the planning of it, and then when the planning, I guess we come back and move to adopting
groups in the community that have done extensive work on the greenways, and we look forward to working with them or hearing what they have come up with. And so we don't need to reinvent the wheel or spend money to reinvent the wheel.
Okay, so on the board implementation, okay,
We're planning on implementing.
okay. I would have a problem voting for all of these together, and a problem with the board and the library, and have a problem with using the word implementation in the greenways. Simply because, I don't know much about it.
No, we're just planning, not implementing.
That's correct.
Okay, but you use the word
We
implementation.
talked, there's another line item program on 7 feet cost of implementation, so we discussed that at the meeting, so I got confused. Yeah, just trying to clarify.
Yeah.
So this is- so the motion-
We're not ready.
Okay, so the motion you're making is just put on the planning, and I think it's been established that without the plan in place, there's nothing to implement.
That's correct. And then part of the planning is implementation, part of the planning process that the county's already been doing in some ways, is to meet with people in the community who have ideas that they're coming to the county with, saying, we want help, we're willing to do our part, we need some help. And that's what this plan is.
So, and I just want to be clear on my position on this. I have been to the pool, I've been to the library, and of course, we've got to figure out capacity and all that. And I definitely see the need for both of those, but I have not received enough information, about the greenways to be able to, have a position of movement, so.
Any help to you, as far as the master plan goes, which we know what the master plan is, and then what's actually doable on that master plan, we're not real sure about that either. But this is part of that process.
So you're wanting to look at it.
Right.
That's
Okay,
correct.
you want to move it forward and look at it as part of the plan.
And in meeting with these people in the community, then they can say, well, yes, we are part of the plan this. There are some groups in the community that have actually done sketches, the meetings, and are organized, and that's what we will start.
And the county has done extensive planning.
Ellen, did you have something?
I was saying what he was saying.
Okay. Okay.
And this would give us an idea of who's ready to move
That's correct.
the first parts of the plan when we get the implementation.
Yeah, and I'll just a little aside here. You'll see there's some community centers that are really ready to move, and other ones that just. We actually sold one of our community centers that just was inactive, defunct. One near me, one on Mill Scout. Busby, wasn't used. We sold it, or we were gonna sell it. We actually, no, I hadn't sold it yet. It's for sale, I think. And that happens. You're gonna have communities that are real hot to do something. Some groups are hot to do something, and some, well, I'm waiting for you to do it for us, or we want more. We want you to raise all the money, and they're not gonna get in. They're not gonna get in.
I have a mental image of a chart that was in front of us previously that was a chart of priorities for the CRA and for the departments of the county. And it seems to me that what we're doing here is anointing this as a priority. We're not implementing, we're not saying we're going to do it. I just remember that sheet of paper had several things on it. We've been visiting those sites and sort of verifying that this is or is not what we want to look at in that dream world that we're talking about. So, it's a plan.
Yeah, in fact, just one other thing about Greenway, another stream of consciousness. Board of Commissioners many years ago passed a dream or a policy that we would like to see a greenway from Brevard to Tennessee. We'd like to be a part of it. We'd like to make it happen. That is our public policy. We have passed such a thing. So, I think sometimes there's some aspirational. You don't want to spend all your time doing aspirational things. You want to get things done. But I do think we must. And I think this board in particular must have an eye to the future, as Dr. Green said earlier.
And I think there also is the sustainability plan as well.
Yeah, we do have that. Very said that. Good. Yes, we didn't have a second. I think we had, I didn't, is there a second to Mr. Kern's motion to move up the planning for the
I think I
greenways?
did, didn't I?
No, nobody seconded.
I'll say.
Where was that? What was that? Was that like the next year or something?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're moving it up a year, basically.
How many things was on this?
This is not the latest.
That's-
It's well answered by me. I think that's the list you're talking.
And I'll say one other thing that you may be helpful. This Zugner pool is, I thought Juan was going to say this. This Zugner pool has been on our master plan since I've been commissioner. It's not new. It just doesn't move up. Some things move up, some things don't. But we do have to have it if there is funding, if the mortgage will accept it, the commissioners will accept it. We gotta tell them what's number one, number two, number three, number four. We may not get number one, but if we won't get it if we tell them what it is.
Can we let them talk about that pool just a second?
We're approaching the end of our agenda, so we
We
can
can
say
say based on what's on the plan, that is part of the plan, and it's going to be an option for discussion.
it's not something that, it's not like we can fund it today, but we need to tell where it is. So, been a motion by Mr. Kern, a second by Ms. Frost. Is there any discussion? If not, call the question. All those in favor say aye. All opposed, no. Motion carries 7-0.
Now can I ask a question?
Let me just, one more thing. I think it's always good to go. I'm going to try to go to the trip. I will try to join the committee. Anybody that wants to go, certainly entitled, and we would love to have everybody there. It is announced, so that's February 6th at 8:30. Going to go take a road trip to Waynesville Rec Center.
And we're going to swim in that races when we get there.
You're the strongest swimmer. All right. Yes, ma'am.
Several months ago, when we were at the pool, we approved, I believe, an initiative to go ahead and start some planning, a needs assessment, and I wanted to know where we are with that, if there's any progress on that, or...
I remember we discussed it here, and I don't remember that there was action taken. I don't remember that.
I apologize, that we were going to get a price maybe, or...
You might check the minutes. I thought we did.
Then I missed it.
No, I'm not saying, please don't allow my memory. Does anyone have the minutes of the meeting that we had at T.C. Robertson?
I think the conversation that day was, before we embrace any broad ideas of prices for either replacement pool or aquatic center, there are going to be some visits, and we talked about meeting with high schools and colleges, other recreational partners, to identify what the needs were before we moved toward any kind of programming that could give us some budget numbers. And I thought we approved like $3,000 to $5,000.
I don't think we do.
You don't think we do?
I think, because I remember, I remember like the person like the concept, I remember saying something about, we ought to go and look at some, look at this, and if that really is, that's what we want to do, is within our ability to do it, say, okay, that's a $2 million pool, that's $30 million.
Yeah, I definitely remember any money.
Yeah, and there's nothing.
Nothing.
Okay.
And so we did go to Kingsport to look at their facility, which is public-private, a lot of interaction there. You see the health system there, you see, this place built this pool, this place, contributed here. It's a combination of the pool and wine. It was ridiculous, but it was expensive. But we learned a lot from that, and there's a lot of information available there. So, and to find, speaking of that, we probably should go to, is the Winston Rec, is it like a smaller, more kind of like what we have now?
It's a combination of our recreation facility with swimming pool lanes with an additional portion of it that also has children's area and have accessibility in the pool area too. It has education as well. Bathrooms for body group. It's a pretty comprehensive facility that is small as it is. It's also strategically placed within an actual park area as well, so drawing areas, volleyball trails. It's a neat center.
There's a lot of well-known facilities out there, and I don't think we can look at too many, you know, I mean, really.
Do we work there?
I was just concerned about, when we talk about this later, meeting the needs of the swim teams and the existing resources that we have and understanding what we have and want to go forward to become a program. Whether we do it big or small. I'm excited about looking at things.
And I'd be glad to offer for the next facilities committee to talk about the studies that have been done in the past and give you kind of an update of where we are and what has exists in our relatively relative region, as well as what we're seeing across the state. And be glad to do that at the next facilities committee if you'd like to.
That would be good. I agree here. I think we've got to know what's around here, because that and the needs. Yeah, I think that's good. That's kind of an informal way to get where you want to go.
I think that the needs are really huge, but until we can articulate that, you know.
Well, who's, my mind just went blank, who's in charge of the board there, with us? We had the Santa hat on.
Oh, Terry Gentile.
Terry, she, you want to know something about, you want to do a needs assessment, just bring her in here and she'll tell you. I mean, she knows that pool and that area is very, very.
Well, and I think you've hit two different issues. You have the issue of replacing the Zugner pool, and then or an aquatic facility. Maybe Zugner's Park, maybe it's not. I think you've got two different things rolling here. And it may be all one project. We don't know. I think we're, like Dr. Green said, I think we're at the end of the Zugner pool as it exists. I think it's just pouring money down the sieve right now. Yes, sir.
Does it make sense for maybe the capital committee to come back at the next meeting or at the appropriate time with maybe some kind of a template for managing all the various components in the process of capital development, so that we can basically select projects and then have a pretty good idea of the standard mode of action? These are the steps we do. Where visitation and needs assessment, and design, contracts, and all that take place.
Probably.
Is this systematic enough to do that, or do you want to do it differently? It's hard to
I mean, I think you can do, I think you can take 3.5 cent very easily and figure out what capacity is, or you can figure capacity is certain. I mean, Wanda or Donna, who's ever can tell us what we want to know.
And Donna Clark is our finance person, and she's also very
I mean, when we look at whether it's schools or whatever it is, you know, they can tell you, well, this amount of money's coming in, this is coming off, and you have the ability to do this, you know, these years. Depends on how you want to look at it.
Yeah, to give you a number, we basically, if you look at like mortgages, we have a $200,000 mortgage. And we have we have a $200,000 house, we have a $60,000 mortgage. That's kind of where we are. I think when we do the school, it's going to go up 65. So that's why we have AAA bond rating. We're not just like Detroit, just crazy, just go way overhead. But we try to keep it so they can do these things. I think the question is the committee, and it might even be capital and facilities together. I don't know. It seems like you both have elements of it. I mean, anybody can go to any meeting, okay? But I think we do need someone kind of getting the groundwork. I agree with that. I don't think it's good. Well, it's okay, but I don't know. I think it'd be more streamlined if we got if we got people to flesh it out in a different meeting, and then come and say, here are recommendations on the process we use to move forward.
So why don't we, to do this with the capital committee, why don't we let the capital committee bring back, we'll have to get one, bring back, like an aerial view of what you just brought today, as far as cost, and what would that look like? See, because what's going to be interesting, unlike the way the commissioners was meeting with these people that were coming in and all the requests, well, they were coming in and having requests, and we didn't have X number of dollars to spend. Well, now, you're going to have these people come and sit down and talk to you, and you're going to have to, have to say, well, yeah, but that's going to cut into my pool.
Thank you so
You're going to have to go,
much.
well, it's going to cut into my pool, so you're going to think probably a little bit different. It might not be so on the budget. I don't know, some of that's being silly, but really you are going to, it is going to be a little bit different with this group, because you got capacity to figure out what that is. You got vision, you got other things out there.
I so appreciate what you're saying. That is exactly where I was going earlier when I was asking Dr. Green about what debt service would be paid off and how much monies would be available. Because in my mind, we've got a fixed amount of money that's not to eclipse dreams. That could be a longer term amortized solution. But we have a fixed amount of money and we have expenses we absolutely have to honor for maintenance and sustainability in the current resources and assets. And then we've got this community pot over here, but we also have these capital things like this pool. And I appreciate you saying that, Joe, because that's where my head was going was, we got a limit here, and what can we do within this, and what do we have to choose between pool, loader, or something else?
There will be some, because there was with us when we were looking at all this, but the dynamic will be a little bit different. But I think we can bring that information back to Mr.
So have it by consensus,
Okay with that?
let the capital group take a look at it.
But invite anybody else, if you want to
Anyone
come,
else?
you come meet with us.
Helen, I'm sorry, Helen?
I mean, so the capital community facilities.
Yeah.
And that's you also.
Why don't you just meet with the facilities? Why don't we just say, both of you meet, get a time, everybody.
Well, that's all it was.
Okay, pretty much.
I mean, that's all. All I'm talking about is
Yeah.
get some math done, bring it back,
Right.
so that everybody can just take a look at it.
Because that's pretty
We don't have to have action.
That's pretty concrete. I mean,
And really, we're probably not going to do it much. It would be probably be one of the one that say, okay, here's the plan, here's the thing, what's the capacity, maybe she or somebody brings that information to us, and then they get everybody, or,
we could
do it.
just email her. She could email
I can
her.
get the information that you're asking for, I think, pretty quickly. So, might be helpful.
So, do you have a date for capital committee, or do you think we can just do this? Just get the
Okay,
information?
how about this? How about I take his request, let me just, and you guys can understand. I'll take his request, I'll take it one, and have her put
Okay.
information put together, and bring it back, and then.
See what we need
then
for
we'll decide what we'll do.
That sound good?
Are you okay with that?
Okay, great. Very good. Okay, we have no more business. Is there any items any member wants to bring up? I appreciate Joe in particular. I don't know how many of you went to the pool. Joe's, you went to Kingsport?
Yeah, I called my 2 days, so we can go in and. Well, we appreciate that. It was gorgeous. It's an amazing, it's an amazing collaboration and vision of, YMCA, and then their two pools. Then they had the pool for the elderly, which is, I could have got in it, but it was amazing. It was sponsored by somebody else, and built by somebody. It had a ramp into it. It was heated at a different degree as the rest of them. It wasn't really, it was pretty big, but it wasn't that big. And it was being used, and it was amazing. It was an amazing.
Outdoor swimming facility as well.
Yeah, they had outdoor swimming, almost an outdoor park, and they generate income from that.
So you've got an 18-acre facility, 46,000 square feet, with several corporate, very big corporate sponsors, and I'm glad to get the summaries for that for you too.
That'd be good. Yeah, we'll throw a big net out there when we start talking about that one. So I'm sure you'll have a lot of interest. Any other comments from any other members? All right, then our next scheduled meeting will be for February 11th, beginning at 3 o'clock. We want to go take another field trip? We want to have it here again? Or we have any other facilities we want to visit?
I'd recommend, particularly if it's still being winter, let's just come back here.
It's a little confusing, but you got the library now.
Yeah, that was, yeah.
Yeah, it's seven.
That's the point, sir.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I got your point.
Right back here, 67 Haywood Street. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Paul, second by Commissioner Felter. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. 7-0, we are adjourned. Thank you.